Thanks, everybody. I'm going to invite everyone to take a step out of wine for a few minutes with me this morning. And we're going to talk about food for a second. So I was really, I was fortunate to take a bit of a break from wine and get some exposure outside of the space. So I kind of think of this slide as sort of what 2 years outside of wine taught me. So after leading communications for Bonterra Organic Estates, I became really passionate about the climate crisis and was motivated to go to work in food technology. So climate technology, what you see here on the slide is an egg that is nature equivalent, made with a copy of a piece of DNA from a hyperfunctional egg white protein that's then raised in bioreactors using, wait for it, fermentation technology. So we heard about fermented foods last night. This is a fermented food. It's also a climate smart food. We think about industrial animal agriculture and some of the pollution that comes from that. It's a problem we'd like to solve. And as passionate as I am about wine, food systems transformation is a pretty significant lever that we can try to pull to make change. And it was interesting in this space where I led branding communications for the Every company. The type of investors who are investing in companies like Every are also investing in things like space. So as you can imagine, coming from the wine industry, which is extremely traditional, and we think about coming together over a glass of wine at the table, suddenly I was really in a different space, and it was gratifying, I would say. I am going to talk a little bit today about lessons from this time. I'm also going to drop in, because it's almost Mother's Day, a couple awesome moms, and talk about the power of the dial. So on my first day in food tech, I was greeted by a mentor. Her name is Rachel Conrad. She was the original communications pro at Tesla, pre-IPO. And Rachel is the embodiment of sustainability. She said to me, "I don't even buy new clothes anymore." That's how committed she is. And I'm somewhat sartorially inclined, so I was very impressed with Rachel. But, you know, one of the things she said was, look, sustainability is important, and sometimes it's crucial to your brand story, but you need to know when to talk about it. She talked about these 3 dials they used early on at Tesla when they were launching the Tesla Roadster, so the first high concept vehicle that they did. And they talked about performance. We know that it's a fast car. They also talked about aesthetics. We know that it's a beautiful car. And they talked about sustainability. And Rachel said, it goes something like this. It's faster than a Lamborghini. It's more beautiful than a Porsche. It's more sustainable than a Prius. And I thought, oh, that's pretty great. And you know, as a communicator, I kind of differentiate myself from marketers. And the 3 dials really worked for me. Marketers are wed to the funnel. You've got to think about transactions, and I think that's amazing. But for me, the dials really worked. And she talked me through some examples of times when she would turn the performance dial way up, and maybe the sustainability dial would not be turned at all. And so I really took that away, along with the fact that in food, they're really close to the consumer. The distribution system that a lot of us inhabit in wine, it creates a barrier to the consumer. So I learned a lot, even though this was a B2B ingredient company selling to other customers. I learned a lot about the data that goes into analyzing front of package, back of package, where you put your claims, including sustainability claims. One of the key takeaways was we know in wine, and it's also true, obviously, in food, that sustainability is not a key purchase driver. And so one of the things Rachel told me as well, great mom, it's almost Mother's Day, thanks, Rachel, was she said, we think about sustainability in terms of orders of communication. So front of pack is a first order. We oftentimes in food think about second and third order placements for talking about sustainability. So that's like the back of the pack, the proverbial cereal box on the table. You know, did you buy that cereal because it's better for the planet? Probably not. You probably bought it because taste, which is always king, right? And some other things. And so I really took that discipline with me, and I love that we heard about sustainability certifications and that we appreciate their value. And we appreciate that you want to communicate about them with your customers throughout the funnel. When you're thinking about where you put them, I think oftentimes back of pack comes to mind, and they're really powerful. And I'm going to come back to that later. This is just a quick bit about, I'm going to wrap up on every and go back to wine in just a moment, but this is just to show you this is a B2B website that we built to talk about the product with the trade. And we wound up launching this with 11 Madison Park. This was a really successful launch. Got some great press. Florence Fabricant at the New York Times came. She wrote about it. Fast Company broke the news, timed to the unveiling, and we got a really cool finalist nom in this Fast Company award category. So, we didn't talk about sustainability at the unveiling. I think is kind of the so what here. We talked about performance. We unveiled this at 11 Madison Park, a 3 Michelin star restaurant, and we unveiled it in a tasting menu where difficult to execute egg dishes were the centerpiece. So if you think about the Tesla, you think about the dial, this was all about performance, and it went pretty well. Thinking industry agnostic, one of the things that I want to sort of weave in here is this notion of kind of time and place. So where are we in terms of how people think about sustainability? Sustainability comes in waves. All the credit to Futera, which is a sustainability consulting organization. This graphic here, I encourage you to look at their report, talks about sustainability interest. And we go back to the 1960s. We see kind of the first Earth Day around 1970. That's a peak. But I think the takeaway is sustainability interest moves in waves. And spoiler, we're in a trough. So around the time that Every got a lot of funding and alternative proteins, plant-based meats, a lot of those things were being backed significantly. Around 2021, there was obviously a peak in the wave. What these charts show, again, look at Futera's research, it's awesome. On the left, we have the acceleration of media cycles and coverage around climate events. So people are being inundated with this news, and we know climate events are accelerating. And on the right, this is this sort of precipitous drop in people talking about sustainability on earnings calls. So what does this mean? Well, you actually need to keep going, is the takeaway, because we know that after every trough, there's going to be another crest. And so this report, I again encourage you to seek it out, does a great job talking about the long-term benefits of adhering to your sustainability strategy. We heard so many great nuggets in the last talk about how it pays to be better and to do good and to have a sustainable ethos built into all your practices. There's operational enhancements. There's so many things. And as Sylvia said, it's a tiebreaker. And I've seen that evidence as well. So keep it up. The brands who stay the course are in the best position to meet all the opportunities when the wave turns up. So again, really interesting research. Encourage you to take a look. An outcome of being in a trough is green hushing. So you've got a lot of skepticism out there with consumers, and they aren't interested in moralizing storytelling around better for the planet. It's just not landing well. So what do we do at a time like this? You just need to be hip to your audience. You need to be aware of where you are in time in terms of these macro trends in sustainability storytelling, and find the way to Trojan horse it in. So I really loved this quote from Elaine Schuken-Brown, another mom in the wine business. This, I have to give credit for sharing this quote to Andrew Catchpole, who's a journalist at Harper's Wine and Spirit in the UK. He heard a talk that Elaine gave at Tasting Climate Change and wrote about it. So hats off to that journalist. And Elaine said, if you are at a restaurant tableside, it's easy to slip in something like, I really think you'll like this wine. It's woman-led, and she has been changing the farming, so the wines are fresher now than they used to be, even though temperatures are higher. So I just think this is a savvy example grounded in on-premise sales about how you can continue to tell your stories in a trough in a way that continues to also build you and the consumer's knowledge for what's up ahead. So she referred to these statements like this as quick little tidbits that can be huge door openers. And I just encourage you all to remember that sensitivity to moralization. So there's nothing moralizing about what she said. She gave good information that connects at a deep level with the consumer and is effectively about sustainability. It's just appropriate for today. All right, it's time for the doom slide. So we know wine is both footprint and future. I love this optimism couched in reality. So, agriculture, we heard yesterday, wine is agriculture. Agriculture is both one of the largest contributors to climate change and provides some of the most important solutions to climate change. I loved hearing at Echolands about all of the things they're doing to nourish the soil and thinking really holistically about their business, including about the human piece. That's another thing we always want to remember, is that even if people maybe are less open to hearing about traditional eco-focused sustainability, there's ways to talk about people-first sustainability that almost always lands. But this is from Green Queen. This is a publication I got to know better when I was at Every. And, this is kind of where we are. And the newer generation understands this. This is the world that they're living in, and we want to meet them where they are. So to that extent, this is an example. I've worked with Cork Supply, a tremendous supplier here in the industry, and they hired my agency to talk about cork harvesting events. And I was super excited about this opportunity because, having spent a couple years out of wine and becoming really attuned to levers and both, technologically driven solutions to climate change as well as natural solutions to climate change, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Cork is the original renewable resource. How have we not been telling this story this way? And Christina Kelly, I'm going to call you out, my hiring manager from Gallo. I thought you'd be proud because I did my messaging for this. And here's my SOCO, my single overarching communication objective. Behind this campaign, when we were thinking about it, Cork Supply builds on industry leadership, bringing the cork harvest to California for the most environmentally aware generation yet. And this was really successful. It's a visual story. We leaned into that. I'll share more of the results in a moment. But amongst the abundance of coverage that these two events at UC Davis and Cal Poly netted, we did have this sustainability messaging pull through in coverage. This is one example what I've highlighted. Over the course of a cork oak's 150 to 200 year lifespan, a single tree can be harvested upwards of 15 times, exemplifying cork as a renewable resource. This was not in the above the fold part of this coverage. It was kind of buried, but I was delighted. We led with what sold, I guess you could say, to use a commercial way in. We led with people, next generation, education. We were hip to the fact this was a visual story. They did this demonstration. It's incredible. If you haven't seen it, please watch a video. But cork is arguably the most sustainable closure and is climate positive. Thank you to Anna Britton, another tremendous industry resource, for saying that. So anyway, I just wanted to share this. This is something that was really fun. We had lots and lots of impressions, 2 broadcast features. And another thing we got out of this was this bonus business coverage. I put it in quotes because actually I was really looking to help this client build awareness for some of their business goals that were not related to sustainability. And so, no surprise, we were able to secure some coverage in some large regional dailies and the business press about the business, and a Q&A with the picture of the CEO. And I don't even think the cork harvest events were mentioned. And it was really a significant, important piece of coverage for their customers and their target audience. And we kind of got permission to talk to that journalist and place that story because of this. So again, I come back to that tiebreaker remark. I come back to reasons to believe, like, you do this work and it will help your business. Absolutely. And we know, of course, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. At Bonterra, I worked with Jess Baum, who at the time was leading sustainability for us over there. And this is her line. I got to give it to Jess. She said, make the consumer the hero of your sustainability story. And I really think that we learned so much from that, because we love to talk about, oh, this vineyard has this certification, and the winery is powered by green energy, so on and so forth, which all are benefits that accrue to us, at least when you say it like that. And so, we wound up flipping that. There's a few examples I'll share, but this next one's a commercial. This is a CTV commercial where you can target your audience, demos, geographies really well. So I supported this through my agency last year with another agency called Little Bear Studios. And let's see if I can get this to play. And listen for the line at the end when it says, "From the good earth we tend to the great wine you savor." That's the line where we're bringing in the consumer. What's in it for me? So 1 second.
Decades ago, we started farming organically. They said we were dreamers, that nature had to be tamed. And we said, shh, listen. Greatness comes naturally when you listen to the earth and farm for the future. From the good earth we tend to the great wine you savor, no matter what they say. Good earth has a name. Bonterra.
So this was fun. This was playing on kind of that notion of early disruption with organic farming, kind of hearkening back to when folks said, why are you doing it that way? It's the wrong way. Everyone in this room knows that that's not the case anymore. But it was fun to kind of tie back to the legacy and then come all the way up to the current day and talk about the consumer and sharing that benefit of the good with the consumer. Here's another example. This is Hobo Wine Company. Excuse me. Hobo Wine Company has just recently won a green medal, and California Green Medal. It's an award that we give away in California, if you haven't heard of it. And I love this brand. I've actually known this family for a long time. And one of the things that I think is really cool that they did is they built a lot of trust. I say transparency is the new luxury. I really believe that sustainability goes hand in hand with building trust. And we know that trust opens so many doors and helps with your long-term brand health. But they disclosed sort of like what went into a bottle of wine. It was a really cool way to just, I think they're known for low prices, for accessible prices, perhaps I should say. And this was just a way to share with people. Now, in the context of their impact report, they also talked about more traditional sustainability metrics, water use and donations and things like that. But this was cool. And I thought contextually, along with the sustainability stuff that you expect to hear, this just made us feel closer to this brand. And that kind of radical transparency is what I'd argue today's consumers want. I'm going to go back in the archives a little bit. When I was at Bonterra, we put a carbon label. It was actually a Necker. It wasn't on the package. As a way to sort of introduce a new certification around climate neutrality. And we took a page from sustainable fashion. This is what's in it for me for the consumer. The consumer should understand what role they have in helping the planet. For me, I thought it was great. Let's think of things that are relatable. I mean, how much CO2 equivalence is in a bottle of rosé? We thought we had a pretty good story to tell, and it turns out we did. And then we made it relatable. We made it fun. I think this campaign holds up. This was a lot of fun and got a lot of coverage and attention, and was a 360 campaign, I'll add. But this is how we took it out to the media. All right, I'm almost finished. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that distance that we have in the wine business with consumers. And I loved hearing in the last panel about how you can talk to the trade, and the trade increasingly needs to have justification for bringing your products on versus others. It's so much further along in Europe, for sure, but we're seeing more of it here, Walmart's Project Gigaton, et cetera. So you are increasingly business bound to, thank you, I see a 3-minute thing, to disclose and share your good. And I think we can also talk a little bit more about how we can get closer to the consumers, how we can overcome that distance that we have when we are in distribution. So if wine has distribution, consumers need connection. Just a couple little things here. Creator spending is way up. If you're not working with creators, I encourage you to think about it. When we think about how trust is built, a lot of it is coming from shared voices. It's from the internet now. We're also learning from the internet and going back and forth. This year's Webby Awards had a lot of awards where creative actually originated on the internet and then was adopted by brands and then reshared on the internet. And it's this whole exciting time that we're in where you get to be extremely connected and co-create your story with your consumers. And then I also wanted to just say go niche. So we're in a time, yes, it's an attention economy. We all know that. And we also know that going niche pays off. It's efficient with your marketing dollars. And niche creator communities are really good at building trust and deepening interest. So when you think about your sustainability story and your brand, think about something that you love, that you can go deep on, and do it. I really think that that is going to pay off. And a lot of folks feel like sustainability is broad. There's so much that we do, or maybe we don't do this as well as we should. How can we then be confident and talk about it? Talk about it. Talk about what you love and what you're really good at. And I think you'll find that the rest of your program will continue to evolve, which is part of the requirement of a sustainable approach. And then you can continue to move to other niche areas of focus. So I just wanted to come back and conclude on that note that we found in research at Bonterra in a project we did last year, and I know CSWA has research on sustainable, that the tiebreaker phenomenon is real, that while wine sustainability certifications or organic aren't the purchase driver for folks when they're queried, it is in fact the thing that makes them choose one product over another, all things considered equal. And if I may, I was really excited about the Biofiltro system last night, and it took me back about 10 years when we launched it at what was then Fetzer Vineyards. So I'd like to leave everyone with a very funny video. I was reminded of this on the bus on the way back, and I had kind of forgotten about it. But we've personified the worm, and I just think it's a good reminder to keep it fun. I loved that calculated irreverence from Herb earlier. You know, at the end of the day, this is a business that's about pleasure and enjoyment, and anytime that we can remind people of that and not take ourselves quite so seriously, I think it's a win. So with that, here you go.
Oh, hi. I was just on my way to work. I'm not your average worm. I'm a red worm. I work for Fetzer Vineyards along with billions of other worms and microbes. Let's just say the early worm gets the parking spot. They're the first American winery to use the Beta system and employ us to treat 100% of their wastewater. The winery's gray water is pumped into an aerobic bioreactor here, where it percolates down through these layers, including this layer, where we work to break down and digest pollutants. It only takes 4 hours. The last system took weeks. And when we're done, the water comes out clean and ready to be reused. Also, our castings help enrich the soil, so we're giving back more than just clean water. Since Fetzer Vineyards hired us, they expect to use 85% less energy while regenerating 17 million gallons of water or more per year. Innovative, fast, and energy-saving. That's what we call a triple threat. Water scarcity is increasing everywhere. I, for one, am glad that companies like Fetzer Vineyards are naturally managing their water footprint. Plus, more jobs for the working worm. Visit Fetzer.com/water.
All right, so we all know that what this really comes down to is continuing to flourish as an industry, and I've heard some great ideas for how sustainability and communicating around sustainability can help support that. So I just want to say thank you for having me. Happy selling so we can all continue to flourish, and happy Mother's Day. Thank you very much.